There's a particular kind of silence that happens at a checkout counter. You tap your card, and for half a second, nothing. No beep, no receipt. Just the cashier looking at you, and the little machine thinking about whether you can afford the groceries already sitting in the bag. And in that half second, your whole nervous system lights up. You start doing the math you've done 100 times. Did rent clear? Was there an automatic payment? Is this the moment right here in front of the guy buying energy drinks behind me that it finally falls apart? Then it beeps, approved, and you exhale like you just diffused a bomb. Millions of people live in that half second. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they're bad with money, but because they have no buffer. Nothing between them and the edge. And here's what almost nobody tells them. There is a specific, surprisingly small amount of money that ends that feeling. It's not $1 million. It's not even 50,000. It's 5,000. And the strangest part is that getting from 0 to 5,000 changes your life more than getting from 5,000 to 50,000 ever will. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the psychology of being broke, and why the first small pile of savings matters more than any pile that comes after it. If you've ever stood at that checkout counter holding your breath, hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why $5,000 is the most important number you've never been told to aim for. Okay, let's start stupidly simple, because the entire personal finance world skips right past this. Most money advice assumes you already have breathing room. It talks about index funds and retirement accounts and compound interest. Like everyone watching has a spare $1,000 lying around being lazy. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, none of that is your real problem yet. Your real problem is that you have no buffer. And $5,000 is the first buffer that actually works. Here's why that number specifically. $5,000 is roughly enough to absorb the disasters that actually wreck normal people. The transmission that dies, the emergency room visit. With 2 weeks between jobs, it's not enough to retire on. It's not even enough to feel rich. But it is exactly enough to stop the bleeding when life does what life does. And that's the entire point. The first 5,000 isn't about getting ahead. It's about finally stopping the thing that keeps dragging you back to zero. Now here's the part that almost nobody understands, and it's the single most important idea in this entire video. The biggest thing $5,000 buys you isn't financial, it's mental. When you have no savings, your brain runs in a mode psychologists actually have a name for: scarcity. And scarcity isn't just stress, it measurably makes you worse at thinking. Researchers have found that the mental load of being broke, of constantly tracking which bill is due, and whether the card will clear, eats up so much cognitive bandwidth that it's like losing a chunk of your IQ for as long as it lasts. Read that again. Being broke doesn't just empty your wallet. It quietly borrows your brain. So the person with no buffer isn't making bad decisions because they're dumb. They're making bad decisions because half their mental horsepower is permanently tied up running disaster simulations in the background. They take the first job offer because they can't afford to wait for a better one. They put the car repair on a credit card at 26% because there's no other option. They stay in things they should leave because leaving costs money they don't have. Scarcity makes the expensive choice the only choice. And $5,000 in the bank is what finally switches that mode off. Think about what actually happens the day your account crosses that line. Nothing changes on the outside, you don't buy anything, you don't feel rich, but something shifts underneath. The check engine light comes on, and instead of a wave of dread, it's just annoying. Your hours get cut at work, and instead of panic, it's a problem you can handle. That shift from catastrophe to inconvenience is the whole game, because once your brain isn't running survival mode anymore, it has room to do something it literally could not do before. Think ahead, plan. Notice opportunities instead of just dodging threats. The buffer doesn't just protect your bank account, it hands you back your own mind. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part most people completely miss. The real value of saving $5,000 isn't the $5,000. It's who you have to become to get there. Think about what it actually takes if you're starting from nothing. You have to look at where your money goes, probably for the first time. You have to say no to things you want. You have to keep doing it month after month when it's boring and slow and nobody's clapping for you. And somewhere in that process, something quietly flips. You stop being a person that money happens to, and you start being a person who runs their money on purpose. That identity shift is worth more than the cash because it's the thing that gets you the next 5,000 and the 5,000 after that. The money is just the receipt. The real product is the person you turned into to earn it. Now let's talk about what that buffer actually absorbs in the real world, because this is where it stops being theory. The average car repair that strands people is somewhere between $500 to $3,000. A single ER visit, even with insurance, lands in the same brutal range. And job loss, the scariest one, the thing that keeps people awake at 3 in the morning, $5,000 buys you something priceless there. Time. It buys you the ability to not take the first desperate offer, to find the right next thing instead of grabbing the first thing. People without a buffer don't get to be picky. They take whatever keeps the lights on, and they often end up worse off than where they started. Your $5,000 is, more than anything, a permission slip to make good decisions instead of desperate ones. Quick favor before we keep going. If this is landing for you, if you're starting to see that number differently, hit the like button. It's free, it takes a second, and it tells the algorithm that regular people actually want this stuff instead of being sold some get-rich-quick nonsense. Okay, back to your money. Because here's where the buffer changes character completely. Up to this point, $5,000 has been defense. Armor. Something that absorbs hits, but at exactly the moment it stops being needed for emergencies, it quietly becomes something else. Options. That certification that bumps your pay but costs a few hundred up front. Before the buffer? After? It's an obvious yes. The side project that needs a little startup money, the trip to the city for the interview that could change your career, the chance to say no to overtime so you can study for something better. None of these are emergencies. They're opportunities. And opportunities have a cruel rule. They almost always require a little money up front, which is exactly what broke people don't have. So the buffer does something sneaky. It starts as a shield and slowly turns into a launchpad, and you barely notice the moment it switches. And now the reframe I promised you at the start. Why 5,000 changes your life more than 50,000 ever will. It comes down to a simple, almost unfair truth about human psychology. The jump from 0 to 5,000 is a change in kind. The jump from 5,000 to 50,000 is just a change in degree. Going from nothing to a buffer takes you from drowning to standing on solid ground. That is a transformation of your entire daily experience. Going from 5,000 to 50,000 is wonderful, but it's the same feeling, just more of it. You are already not drowning. The biggest emotional return on any money you will ever save is concentrated in that very first buffer, the one that gets you out of survival mode. Every dollar after that matters less emotionally than the dollars that came before. Which means the most life-changing money you will ever save is also the most reachable. The first 5,000, the one everybody tells you is too small to bother with. So what do you actually do? First, make it automatic, because willpower is a liar. Set up an automatic transfer the day after you get paid, before you ever see the money, even $50. The goal isn't the amount, it's removing yourself from the decision. Because the version of you that has to choose to save every month will eventually lose. Second, plant a starter sum if you can. Sell something, take the tax refund. Get one chunk in there fast, even a few hundred. Because watching a balance grow from something is 10 times more motivating than starting at 0. Third, find your one big leak, not the lattes. Everyone obsesses over coffee. Meanwhile, the real money is hiding in the subscription you forgot about, the plan you never renegotiated, the thing on autopay you stopped using months ago. One big leak fixed beats 50 tiny sacrifices. Fourth, keep it separate and slightly annoying to reach. A different bank, no card attached, somewhere it earns real interest and you can't tap it in a weak moment at midnight. Out of sight genuinely is out of mind. And fifth, protect the number once you hit it. 5,000 is not a reward to spend. It's a foundation to stand on. The whole point was the standing. Here's the thing nobody tells you about that checkout counter feeling. It was never really about the groceries. It was about having no margin, no room, nothing between you and the edge. And the wild part is that the thing that fixes it is so much smaller than you've been led to believe. Not a fortune, not a finance degree, $5,000, and the version of you that's disciplined enough to build it. That's the number that ends the half second of silence at the register. That's the number that hands you back your own brain, your own choices, your own mornings. Everybody points you at the giant milestones, the ones so far away they may as well be on the moon. But the one that actually changes your life is sitting right there at the bottom of the ladder, close enough to touch. Start with the first 5,000 because that card is going to get tapped again tomorrow either way. The only question is whether you finally get to stop holding your breath. And if watching this made you think you could make videos like this, you probably could. The community link is in the description. I'll see you in the next one.